What's up, everyone? I'm here at my Week 6 NFL DraftKings picks. This time we're going to be talking about some sleepers and value plays. If you haven't seen my main picks video, you can check the link in the description or click the link in the top right of your screen right now. Also, quick little reminder, I mention it in almost every video, but I need to remind you guys again to follow me on Twitter if you want updates. This week there's a couple of different games that appear are going to be affected by weather. We have Kansas City and Oakland and Seattle and Atlanta. Both of those games appear to be kind of a rainy, windy affair. So stay up to date with those picks because I like quite a few players in both of those games. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the picks. Okay, so the first guy that I want to talk about is Cam Meredith, and this guy is a pretty obvious play this week. I mean, I mentioned it a bunch in my video on Wednesday. It's a pretty obvious week where you need to spend up at running back because there's just so many elite running backs this week who have killer matchups. So it's a week you need to spend up at running back and you need to find some value at the wide receiver position. I expect Cam Meredith to be really highly owned, but with good reason. I mean, he's coming off a 12-target game, 130 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. So at this price point, if you can just get half of that production, I mean, even if he only has like 6-7 targets, and even if he just goes for 6 receptions for 80 yards, if he puts up a touchdown, then you're dancing because it's exactly what you want. So at this price, you need to consider Cam Meredith, and honestly, he's a guy that probably should be in your cash game lineup because he's a pretty safe play this week. All right, so for this next guy, it brings me physical pain every time I have to put Tavon Austin in my lineup. Like, it really hurts because he's just a guy who has potential, but he never capitalizes on it. The Rams use him weirdly. It's just an odd situation, but this particular week, and again, I keep saying it, but this is a week where you have to find value at the wide receiver position, and below $4,000 mark, Tavon Austin is probably the best player, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but dare I say Tavon Austin is cash game playable. In fact, the last cash game lineup I made, I had to put Tavon Austin in it, and it was painful. Like I said, it was a really scary pick. Like, he's just a guy, you cross your fingers and you have to turn your back to the TV screen because you can't bear to watch it. So, I mean, that said, it's not a bad matchup for Tavon Austin at all. I mean, he's facing off against the Lions, who have allowed 39 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. They've allowed 7 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers, which is third worst in the NFL. Tavon Austin always has some punt return upside. It's not going to happen that often, but if you want to double dip, basically what that means is you can take a punt returner and the defense, and if Tavon Austin happens to return a punt for a touchdown, that means you're going to get 12 points automatically because you're going to get points from the defense and you're going to get points from Austin, obviously. So that's a good tournament strategy. I like to do that sometimes with guys who have punt return upside. Austin's had 6 targets in every single game this season. Another interesting thing I want to point out is the Lions have allowed 0 rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs this season, which is interesting. So that means once they get into the red zone, the Rams are probably going to be looking to pass the ball. I mean, they're probably actually going to be looking to ground and pound with Todd Gurley, but if that doesn't work, they're going to have to pass the ball. And, in the red zone, the first person that comes to mind is Lance Kendricks because they're probably going to be trying to throw the ball to him because of how bad the Lions are against tight ends. But you never know. Maybe Tavon Austin can sneak one in there. I'm not gonna get my hopes too high for that. But I think Austin is a safe play under 4K, and I mean it's not a bad matchup. It's just like I said, it sucks to put him in your lineup. But the way that you have to build lineups this week, it's very likely you're gonna have to do it in a cash game at least. Okay, so next up for me is Alex Smith, and I love this matchup. I mean, as everybody should. I mean, I talk about it on almost every video now, but the Oakland passing defense is terrible. They're allowing over 330 passing yards per game. Alex Smith is a guy that a lot of people just don't like to play because they just don't think he's that good. But, I mean, he's not terrible. He's getting a lot of opportunities right now. He's thrown the ball over 30 times in every single game this season. He had one game with 48 passing attempts and had another with 50. So, I mean, he has a rushing touchdown, so he does have rushing upside. And I just like him. I mean, there are some weather concerns in this game, so keep tabs on that. The other thing you need to keep tabs on is Jamal Charles. I heard at best he's getting 50% of the snaps. If that's the case, I'm not worried about Charles at all. But again, if the weather does come into play, Charles may get a little bit more action, so we'll have to see about that. So, I mean, all in all, I don't hate playing Alex Smith in cash games. If you want to go with an Alex Smith, Jeremy Maclin stack in cash games, I can't blame you. I mean, a lot of people are looking at Brian Hoyer, And if the weather ends up getting pretty bad in Oakland, then that's probably where I'm going to go. I'll probably go Hoyer if I'm going to go cheap in cash games at quarterback. But right now, I think I like Alex Smith a little bit more, to be perfectly honest with you. So, I mean, there's so many good options for quarterbacks at the top right now that Alex Smith, an Alex Smith, Travis Kelce, and Jeremy Maclin stack may not be a bad option at all in tournaments. My particular model keeps, spitting that out at me. So right now, I like Alex Smith a lot, and I think he's a great value quarterback. Okay, so the next guy that I want to talk about is Lamar Miller, and he's a player who's really underperformed to this particular point in the season. And if he can't turn it around right here in this particular spot where he has a great matchup, then he's probably going to be a guy who I'm not going to look to much more this season at all, because if he can't perform well against Indianapolis Colts, who struggle immensely against the running back, then, like I said, he just probably isn't going to do much this season. The Colts are allowing 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. They've allowed 3 receiving touchdowns to opposing running backs, which is tied for the most in the NFL. And, I mean, Lamar Miller is in a really good spot, like I said, but I also think he's not going to be owned. Like, if we take a look at the pricing this week on DK, he's kind of in this no man's land. And it's something that I like to talk about sometimes. But Le'Veon Bell and DeMarco Murray are clear-cut the 2 most expensive, running backs, obviously, and they're probably one of the two of the 3 best plays. But everybody's going to look everybody's going to look for Le'Veon, everybody's going to look at DeMarco Murray, LaShawn McCoy, and then if they're going to look for a little bit cheaper option, they're probably going to go Jordan Howard, maybe even Mark Ingram, and that leaves Lamar Miller like right in between at the 6,600, spot, where I just don't think many people are going to have him. I think people still don't believe in him. I think people are scared away from the Texans, especially when they're coming off of a terrible game against the Minnesota Vikings. And I just think he's going to be low owned. I think he could possibly get in the end zone for the first time this season. And even if he doesn't, it's not like he's so expensive that you can't find those points that you need in your lineup at another position. So I like Lamar Miller a lot. I think he's going to be low owned, and he should play well, but we'll see what happens. All right, so the next player that I have down here is Jesse James, and I think this is a great spot to get a cheap, affordable, and realistic piece of the Steelers offense that's probably going to be low owned. I mean, Jesse James is easily going to be the lowest owned member of the Steelers who realistically has a chance to score a touchdown. I say that because, there's other options out there, but again, some of those just don't make sense. Obviously everybody wants Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, but Antonio Brown is so expensive that it's just going to be tough to fit him in basically any lineup this week, let alone a tournament lineup. But, a lot of people are going to want to get Le'Veon. A lot of people are going to want Sammy Coates. I think Coates is a good option, but everybody's going to have him because he went off last week. He has stitches in his hand now. I heard he's wearing a club. I did hear reports that he actually caught passes at practice today, but that said, even before the injury to Sammy Coates' hand, he was already having problems actually catching the ball. So I like Jesse James. He's not a guy who's going to catch a ton of passes. He's not a guy who's going to get a ton of targets, but he's caught a touchdown pass in 3 of the 5 games this season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a guy who's definitely going to get some red zone targets because he's like 6'7", 260 pounds or something. He's a massive man. So everybody's going to, kind of look towards Antonio and Le'Veon and even Coates. I think this is a good spot to get Jesse James. And if he can if he catches 2 passes and gets a touchdown, that's all you need, like, honestly. And he has a stat line exactly like that. If he had 2 targets, 2 receptions, and a touchdown, he put up 9.5 points. You can't complain about that at this price point. So I like Jesse James a lot. All right, so the last guy that I want to talk about is Ted Ginn Jr., and he is a super risky play, but in tournaments, he could pay out so big. He is going to be so low owned, even though the Panthers have a killer matchup, because everybody's going to be looking at guys like Greg Olsen, obviously Kelvin Benjamin. Some people are probably going to be interested in Jonathan Stewart, of course. And Ted Ginn Jr. is really going to get overlooked, even though he has, really big play potential. We can take a look at the last time that he faced the Saints on the road in New Orleans. He put up 25 points, had 5 receptions for 80 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, that's not the stat line you're really going for when you pick Ted Ginn Jr. The stat line you're really going for is what he did against the Falcons last season and the first time they faced them at home. And he put up 29.5 DraftKings points on 2 receptions, 120 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for, 3 or 4 catches for 100-plus receiving yards and a pair of touchdowns, because Ted Ginn Jr. is a boomer bust player, you know. That said, if you pick this guy and you put him in your lineup, you have to be willing to take a 0. Like, he realistically can put up 0 points. Like, he put up half a point last week against the Buccaneers. Half a point. He had 1 reception, 5 yards, and had a fumble. Ted Ginn Jr. also has some slight punt return ability. Again, he's so fast that he always has a chance, but I watch pretty much all the Panthers games, and he's not that good of a punt returner. I mean, the only reason he's out there is because he's super fast. He has really bad hands. If he doesn't call for a fair catch, he's probably just going to catch the ball and then run straight to the sideline like he always does. So I really wouldn't put too much faith in that, but I like Ted Ginn Jr. I think he has a decent chance to at least put up some points. But again, you're really hoping for him to outburst for the 20-plus point performance, because if he does that, that could win you a lot of money. All right, so that's going to do it for all of my Week 6 picks. I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for everybody who subscribed, dropping nice comments, liking the videos. I just appreciated all of it so much, and it really inspires me and motivates me to keep doing these videos and whatnot. So I hope I'm helping you guys out. Hopefully we both can have a really, really successful and profitable Week 6. And good luck to all of you, and hopefully I'll see you back here next week. Later.